folks, I'm back again for another podcast. The last podcast was about, I don't know how long ago actually. I got some good feedback from people. A lot of people watched it, said they enjoyed it, and gave me some criticism. So I thought, let's make another one while it's still in my mind to keep doing these. So here we go. I'm going to be speaking a little bit softer in this one today because I'm recording it later at night. I'm downstairs as opposed to my bedroom where I was last time because my family are upstairs and I don't want them being annoyed by me. So I'm down here. The topic of this podcast kind of follows suit with the previous topic. So last podcast, if you watched it, thanks very much. We were talking about my injuries that I faced, whether they be broken bones, falling off treadmills, or other dumb stuff that was mentioned. In this podcast, I want to talk about childhood injuries that I've had. It sounds a bit risky, but I mean like scars that I have because of stuff that happened when I was younger. So we're gonna talk about that today. So with this topic, I have a few written down that I can remember a lot of details about, some of which I'm not so sure, so we'll go through them. None of these are in chronological order because I have no idea when any of them happened, but I just still have the marks to remind me of them. So let's start off with the first one that I have written down here. First scar that I have on the list is one that's on the back of my hand. You won't be able to see it in the video, but I'll get a closer picture of it and I'll put it up on screen. This injury came from what my mum says, me being a curious child. I'm not sure what age I was when this happened, but as soon as you step out of our driveway, on the ground built into the street was this little drainage pipe that has a circular and it had a wee lid that just flipped up and down. You weren't really supposed to lift it up because I don't really know what it was there for. Clearly wasn't there for kids, but me being a unusual little boy decided to lift it up and stick my hand in it, which is gross, and God knows what's inside that drain pipe or the drainage system. And I stuck my hand in it, and apparently my hand got stuck and I started freaking out. Luckily, my superhero of a mum came in to the rescue and saw my hand stuck, and instead of just like being nice and calm and sliding my hand out, she tugged as hard as she could, pulled and ripped skin off my hand. Pretty gross injury for a young lad to have, because my hand's all dirty from this drain pipe and now I'm bleeding. But that's the first injury that I remember being told about as a kid. So there you go. The second one that I have on the list is a bit of an unusual one because even my mum doesn't know where it came from or why it happens. You can notice it sort of when you're in person with me and you see me speak. I have this, it's like on just below my nose. It's just below my nose. It's a white scar in like that mid, I don't know what that area is called, just above my top lip, and I'll try and get a photo of it to put beside me here, but my mum has no idea where it came from. I have no idea where it came from. I don't know if it's normal. I don't know if anyone else has it, but yeah, that's another scar because it does look like a scar, but I genuinely have no idea where this came from and why I have it. But there you go. So the next injury that I have will probably resonate with you if you have a sibling and if you like wrestling. My brother Stefan, he is a year and a half older than me, and we used to watch WWE a lot. We had all the Xbox games of WWE, we had loads of wrestling toys, which I still have today. When you're watching wrestling, there's many times throughout the show that I'll remind you not to try this at home.
Please don't try this at home.
So we thought we'd outsmart the system and not try it in our home, but we were wrestling in my granny's house when this injury came about. So we were waiting for some food, I assume, because that's typically why we go to my granny's house. And we were just play fighting on the floor. And like kids, the play fighting was getting a little bit out of control. For some, I don't know how this happened, but I was on my stomach on the ground and Stefan had me in some weird form of headlock, which was new. I had not experienced this form of headlock. I didn't see it on TV. I'd never seen this one before. So Stefan had me in a headlock on the floor and I tried to push my way out, but unfortunately his thumb, I assume, his thumbnail was pressed against my forehead and just scraped some, like a big chunk. At the time it looked like a big chunk. I thought a big piece of my forehead had come off, but it's probably only a wee tiny bit. Needless to say, I eventually got out of the headlock because blood started dripping down my forehead because a piece of skin has now been removed by Stefan's nail. He took that as a win. I was just upset that I was bleeding everywhere before food, but that's the story to the weird scar on my forehead. So again, in person you'll probably notice it if you're standing close and look at my forehead, but I don't advise people to just stare at my forehead because that's kind of weird. But you'll probably see it in person if you're looking close enough. So that's 3 of the weird injuries and scars that I have from when I was a kid. This next one is another odd one for me because I don't really remember it. The story was told to me by my uncle. My cousin has a fair memory of this as well because he's involved. My uncle Timmy was an avid collector of different knives. Don't know why. It's a little bit intimidating, but each to their own. So he had a collection of knives, loads of flip knives and other stuff. We were kind of young at this stage and we were really into Power Rangers, so we had our own collection of knives that were much less deadly but also much cooler looking. So I think we had a blue Power Ranger sword knife thing, and apparently, from what I've been told, my cousin Kristen, who is round about 2 years younger than me, at the time we were young kids, so I have no idea when it actually happened. He happened to pick up what we thought was the Power Rangers knife sword thing, and he hit me in the leg with it, but we did not realise that it was my uncle's blue actual knife. It cut open my leg, I think. I'm unsure of the exact details, but I have his picture of his knife to clarify what was stabbed into me. Also, to this day, we have no idea how Kristen managed to get hold of the knife. We're not saying that our uncle left it next to our toys, because that is definitely not what happened, but somehow Kristen found the knife. So I don't know if that says more about my uncle or my cousin at this point, but I was stabbed in the leg with a knife as a kid. Another injury that I do remember having happen as a kid was when I was with my friend Connor at the park round the corner from where I used to live. When we were kids, we spent a lot of our time in this park. It had like a play park, a basketball court, and then this wee foresty bit that was connected to our primary school. So it was somewhere that we knew, and we were close to home if we ever needed anything. So the dreaded day that this injury took place, Connor and I were there with some other kids, whatever, in the forest, and saw a piece of metal, or 2 pieces of metal that had come off the fence, and it's kind of hard to describe what the metal looked like. It just seemed like a straight black bit of metal with a wee tiny spike on either end of it. I don't know what part of the fence it was supposed to be, but we took these and decided to dig up some dirt with them because we were kids and we were bored, and that's what kids do. We got these bits of metal and we were digging up bits of dirt, but I didn't realise that I was standing too close to Connor. So when he swung his bit of metal back over his head, it stabbed into the top of my head. A tiny spike on the metal sliced my head open, and it felt sore at the time. I remember feeling like the blunt force of it hitting me, but then I just carried on digging like a normal child. Continued my mission. The moment I realised that there was something wrong was when one of the other kids just looked at me and started screaming. So I felt the bump on my head and looked at my hand, and it was just completely covered in blood. Luckily for me, my mum was just at the shop just across the road from the park. So I held my little head and waddled over to her and showed her what happened and was rushed to the hospital. So that was the first ever experience I had split my head open. Well, I didn't split my head open, Connor split my head open, thanks. But once I got to the hospital, it was glued shut as opposed to stitched shut, and it seemed to heal fine. I still have a wee patch of hair that can't grow on the scar, which is kind of funny, but that's very hard to notice. It's hard to see unless you're looking for it. So Connor split my head open, and that's another story that kind of traumatized all the rest of the kids at the park. But yeah, and the last injury that I've written down here kind of links up with the previous splitting head story. I've only split my head twice in my life. The first time was Connor, which technically I still say I didn't split my head. But anyway, so the first head split was this digging in the park, and the second head split was years later. On the day of this incident, I had went to visit my mum in work, and I thought I would be very funny and hide under the stairwell and jump out and scare my mum as she came down the stairs, because I was a mischievous little kid and thought that was hilarious at the time. I was unaware that there was a big blocky looking phone box stuck on the wall beside where I was hiding, and as I heard my mum coming down the stairs, I jumped up, pounced up from underneath the stairs, and didn't hit my head on the stairwell, but I hit my head on the very corner of the phone box, right on the same spot that I had split my head open years before, and it literally just opened like a volcano and started bleeding again, and I was rushed to the hospital. Thanks again, Mum, for being my hero and taking me to the hospital and getting myself glued shut again. So that's the majority of scars that I have from when I was a kid. I probably have a few more that I don't really know how they got there or where they came from, but those are the ones that have unusual stories behind them and that I can sort of remember. That's kind of all I wanted to talk about. This is a shorter podcast because I felt the last one went on a bit too long. I think it was 30 minutes or something like that. So yeah, thanks for listening / watching if you watched on YouTube and whatever. I appreciate it. Leave some support and comments for whatever else you want to see from me, and I'll see you again another time. Kids aren't supposed to stick anything in there. I stuck my hand in like an idiot. Play fighting, but you know those play fights that get a little bit too serious. My brother Stefan, he is a year and a half older than me, and we used to watch WWE a lot. We had all the wrestling games for the Xbox and play it. My mum used to work in a place. What am I talking about?